Hi everyone, welcome to a Breakout. So today's episode is both very personal and profound as we reflect on the loss of my team member at work. It was a very sudden death and I'm still in the grieving process. So we ended up having this chat about dealing with the loss, and I was not sure about sharing it at first because it's pretty heavy stuff. But honestly, it helped me a lot to talk it out. And we are putting this episode out there hoping it might help anyone else experiencing loss, somebody experiencing similar situation. And our hearts go out to his family, and we dedicate our thoughts and a prayer to his memory as well.
I guess, of walking through your own death, because of the power of once you understand death, you understand life, and you live completely differently.
I don't fear death itself, but I do want our message to get out. I do want people to be helped with the things we've gone through in life. Like I feel like I tell you all the time, I've lived 1,000 lives in this one.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I do need the rest, I'm sure, after all the
We
living.
need to hear a lot of it.
You know, they feel like they're just going, and they never have those breaks. And they feel that the only time they will get a break is when they pass away. For me, death is something, obviously when we're younger, you don't understand it. And it's very final. And it is scary. Tadao, it is very, very scary. But then when you have experienced it, and if you see someone who's died, violently, or it's been horrific, then again, yes, that you have those fears and that sort of, am I going to go that way? Is it going to be like that? And how terrible is it going to be? But then when you've had the experience of somebody who does go in their sleep, and I've seen that, twice with two people who have just passed away in their sleep, it is very, very gentle. And in some ways, it gives you that sort of peace in your heart, in your mind, that person has moved on to that next place.
There's just never the right words to say to a person that's grieving. People
I
grieve
know.
differently. And just know that people don't know. They don't know how to deal with it. It's awkward. They don't know what to say, especially with all these employees that are grieving and suffering the loss of their friend. And it's a shock. And death also makes us realize just how fragile life is, especially from a 20-something-year-old kid, I guess what I'm trying to tell you is take the time you need to process this and grieve it in whatever way. There's still a grieving process. There's still a loss.
Yeah. Because each person, each employee, including me, has a different story about this death. It's a one death, but we all have a different perspective of it. Because when I heard of it, one thing that popped up in my head is like, was I being too harsh on him?
Oh.
So I sort of felt a little bit of guilty. And for other employees who was his friend, they also feel guilty why they couldn't stop him doing drugs and drinking exceed amount of alcohol. Everybody has a different story, but nobody knows the answer because he already passed away. We don't know what caused him doing, using drugs and like why he needed to drink this much of alcohol like every day. We all don't know it. So just Victoria said, we just need time to process.
Race car drivers jump in those cars and they realize that they're going at death speed, and they still love the thrill of the adrenaline. They love the sport. They get behind the wheel, the car flips, and they die. But I always say, well, they died doing what they love. The Bible does tell us that God knows our days. He knows every hair in our head, and he knows how many days we're going to live on this earth. So whether you're in a car wreck, a drug overdose, a heart attack, I just believe when it's your time, it's your time.
Yeah.
And a lot of people may not believe that way, and that's fine too. But so that takes a little bit of the pressure off of you as to feeling guilty for maybe I was too harsh on him, or I promise you, I promise you, I promise you. I know you, and I don't think you could be too harsh on anybody. And it goes back even to your parents' divorce. Was I
Right.
responsible for that? So you just have to tell yourself, no, I had nothing to do with that. Those were not my choices. That was not my decision for his life.
And whatever your intention was behind your interaction, when I hear you telling stories, you take your job to heart and it means something to you, and you like to help others to raise up into that same space. And if you were doing your best to try to help raise that up in him as well, it's sometimes, as we come into understanding the self-love and that it's okay to love people and give them stern direction or expression of what it's like for you to experience them. I had to come to terms with that also in living with an alcoholic. What the consequence of that was sometimes was that we were all very upset. We all felt very hurt and very frustrated or very misaligned. And so when we express that, it's also a natural expression, but sometimes I would sit in judgment of that and think I shouldn't ever respond this way, that I should be superhuman, if you will. But then that just teaches that there's nothing happening here or it's almost like if we didn't respond naturally, then we're not authentically expressing so that they can receive what it's like to, if I were to spew hatred right now, the natural response is that things will feel hated. And then that gives me information like, oh, maybe I want to change what I'm doing. But if I throw out hatred and you all smile and you say, that's okay, then I go, oh, that's okay. And it teaches me to continue. And that's what enabling really is. But it doesn't feel like that from the enabler standpoint. We think, oh, this is mean or this is hurtful to be honest with people and authentic. So it's a whole mindset shift, that honesty and integrity to what is of the utmost importance. And then we feel clean and complete, if we do that in the kindest way possible.
Debbie, what is that wonderful expression that you always use about love?
Love, that's telling people the truth, is loving them, because especially if there's something they're doing that is hurting themselves or other people, right? By sharing that with them as much, in the kindest, most graceful way, of course would be the optimal, but regardless, sharing that truth with them is the most loving act that can happen for them to be able to see the truth and have an opportunity to stop what is happening if their behavior is hurting them. And I also have said, if I picture that person in heaven or outside of the situation watching, they would want us to stop them. They would want us to say, wake up. This has to end. You're hurting yourself. Your behavior is causing you to head in a direction that isn't healthy. But that's hard to be that person until you yourself believe it. Until I believed that it was loving, then I only could speak from that space. If you try to lecture people and say, well, what you're doing is not good, and it's judgmental, there's a lot of times where we're not healthy and clear with our own selves about it. But when it comes from a space of actual love from me, the message is heard differently than it is when I'm scolding, judging, or quiet, like silence. No, I'm fine. Nothing's wrong. I was good at that one.
And then there's an explosion because we take it in and take it in and take it in. And we're like, no, I'm good. It's all good. If I ever tell somebody I'm good, they better duck. I'm just telling you because I'm going to throw something soon. Not really, but anyway, yeah. So I think though when we do that and we don't respond and in a responsible, loving manner, like, okay, this is unacceptable. It's about boundaries. This is unacceptable behavior. If you choose to kill yourself on a daily basis, that is on you, but I can't watch this any longer. I can no longer be a part of this. And I've been known to in my past because I was trying to do people please and, be accepted or be liked or whatever. And you just put up with stuff and put up with it until you don't.
And we either have to come to completion with the relationships we have while people are alive, or once they pass, we still have to come to completion with them. So it's also kind of knowing that, like, for my own completion and clarity and like peace of mind, that as much as we can work things out with people while they're alive, that it's a gift. But oftentimes we can't, depending on the way that someone's able to receive that. So coming to terms with the grief, and then also any incompletions with that relationship, it's really important to unpack it and not just be like, okay, that person's gone now, I'm going to keep moving on, which a lot of us do when it's too painful.
We are too in rush. We need the time to process everything. Because, like me as a manager and I try to manage my team, it takes time. People take time to learn. People take time to grow. But we are so in a hurry. And sometimes I be so strict to them. Sometimes really hard on them. But out of love. Because I want them to grow. I want them to have a successful life. But then nowadays people are so in rush and people aim for the outcome instantly. Like those instant gratification is everywhere. And like we don't wait people to grow. You make a lot of scenario in your mind. And I know most of it's not true, but just it's happening so naturally. Sometimes you believe it. You think like it's a reality. But when you live intentionally, you realize those scenario is just your limiting beliefs.
Tadao, I liked what you said about instant gratification, because I feel that too. I hate to keep going on about, when we were younger, but when we were younger, you saw people, they saved up for what they wanted. My mum was a classic example of that. She knew what she wanted, and then she would save up for it, and then she would go and get it. The fact that I really admired my mum, because she was the person who took the time to learn stuff. She didn't know how to do it. She really worked at it until she learned it. And the same with, saving up for things that she wanted. And I see that today we're all so stuck in that instant gratification. I love that you say that you understand that, and that you are willing to take the time with your employees to show them the ropes, to say, look, here, I'm here for you. And also today, give yourself grace. You're not there when they go home. You don't know what their lives are like. And when they come, there is a certain level of expectation that when you show up as an employee, you're ready to do the work. You cannot second guess yourself as somebody who's managing them, because you wouldn't get anything done if you were second guessing yourself constantly and being concerned about, oh my God, did they have a good day? If you see someone is not in a great position, obviously you take them aside and say, hey, are you okay? And you are so kind. I know that's what you do. But if somebody sort of turns up and they're acting out and that's a constant for them, you can't be sort of get in their head and figure out, because that's not your whole job. Your job is doing 101 other things. So you're really kind to everyone else, and I'm going to encourage you to be kind to yourself.
I definitely need to be.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
And Tadao, your response was that you wanted to go immediately to be of service to your employee and his family, and show up and be offering yourself to the situation. And that is like such a beautiful heart response to what is happening, that if you believe that the spirit of this gentleman understands what you're doing for him in this moment, I mean, that's priceless. Not everybody responded like you, or else there would have been a house full of people. And I don't
That
know if
was
there
the
were
only
or
way.
not.
That was the only way.
And
And that
getting
was your natural Tadao-ness just shining.
now one of the biggest lessons that I would love to see you take away from this is that you were disciplining him or talking to him with love. He was still working for you. You had not given up on him. However, sometimes as an empathetic person, we want something for a person's life much more than they do. We want them to succeed and have a good life and to have a good job. And sometimes, honey, that's not in the radar for them at that moment. It's all about what they want to do with their lives. And it took me so long in life to realize that yes, always show love, but there's a point in time when you're empty because you're always pouring into their cup. And there's a hole in the bottom of that cup. They're taken and taken and taken. I'm not saying this individual. I'm just saying with life in general. So just notice yourself, because you can pour all of you out into another person and never get an ounce back. And then you're depleted emotionally. You're tired. You're, physically worn out with it. So I think that we should walk down the road with a person as long as they're growing and as long as they're really taking that in and accepting those things. But at some juncture, we have to realize, I want this more for them than they do. You see it in the ball field every day. If you go to the ball field and there's 6-year-old soccer players and the dad's up in the bleachers screaming and hollering at that kid, and the kid's going the wrong way with the ball and just having a good time. Dad wants to win the game far more than the 6-year-old, right? And we see that every day. So that was probably one of the hardest life lessons for me to learn with someone.
Yeah, you know what they say, replenish the well. So you have to give to yourself first before you can give to anyone else.
That's
and yeah.
Those healthy boundaries, something I really need to learn. Daily practice. I'm getting better.
Yes, you are getting. Boundaries are such an important thing in life, in all walks of life. I don't know if y'all ever listened to Med Circle. I was listening to Dr. Romney on there, and she was talking about narcissistic personalities and personality disorders, and just how they just suck the oxygen out of the air and they just use you. Basically, she's saying that we feel, most people feel that if we put ourselves first, that it's just we're being arrogant or we're being narcissist or we're being selfish. And I love, Furzana, you're working on the self-ish. And people do need to put themselves first, because we're not good for anybody else if we're not complete in ourselves.
It took me a long time to get to that place, but I realized that when I put myself first, then I've got a lot more to give to everyone else. When you fill yourself up so much, it's that overflow that comes from you that you give so willingly to everyone else. And I never wanted to get to the place, because I did have a moment where I was so depleted. And Victoria, what you had said was that moment, the reaction was greater than the situation, because it wasn't the reaction for just that moment. It was a sort of a cumulative, I've been doing and I'm just worn out. So I had that life lesson. And it sort of reminded me that it's better to say things, when you're in the moment, because you can take a step back, but you can also say it with the level that it requires. When you wait and I've had another situation where we waited and it went beyond the scope of what it really was.
But like when I'm working at a restaurant, I encounter a very interesting situation. The people really make up their own scenario. in their mind, and it doesn't matter what the truth or not, they believe in it.
Yes.
It's a totally different dynamic of the story, though. My restaurant, we don't take reservation. And over the phone, we always say, so like, we don't take reservation, first come, first serve. So, but they said, well, I will come with 10 people around this time. Okay, but we don't take reservation. So, but yeah, if you have a table, we can give it to you. But like, I will see you later. And they come to the restaurant and say, so I made a reservation at this time, like with these certain people. And I'm like, so we don't take reservation. And actually, I was the one who take the phone call. So yeah, we don't take reservation. And they're like, but somebody said they take reservation. And I told them the time and how many people coming. So like, I realized people really don't listen to people.
That's so true.
This is a totally different dynamic, but it happens in your everyday life. People believe in what they want to believe in.
And their perception, everybody's perception, you can say the same thing to 12 people. We don't take reservations. And 6 of them are going to show up saying they have a reservation or more. It's how we perceive things. It's crazy.
So when you think about it, it's so crazy. Like, I'm wondering about what other people is thinking. It's even not what they're thinking about. And it could be beyond what they're thinking about, or even less than what they're thinking about. But if I'm going to start wondering about it, it goes nowhere. So I just need to trust myself and do my best. And if I do anything out of love, I just need to trust the process and do not aim for anything instantly and just be patient with it.
Tadao, it's your way of being a parent right now. It's the exact thing when you're parenting. Honestly, there's so many personalities. And just like when you were describing your role and your desire for your employees, it was just reminding me that it's that same dynamic that you get to experience what parenting is like, because it's very much this. we only want the best for our children, and they go and do themselves 100%. When they try to do what we want, or they try to be what, the person that we want them to be, it's just temporary. And it's just probably delays them from finding themselves, really, because they have to find their path. They're different than we are, but we get to thinking that just because they are under our roof, or they came out of our bodies, or because you are their boss, or because that it should all flow this way, but it doesn't.
Think about it. I'm doing that with 30 people.
Oh man,
30 children.
You are having 30 children at the same time.
Oh my goodness. But I was going to say, Tadao, I think the best for me, what works is as long as you know what your intention is, right? Because as Victoria said, everyone's perception is different. You can say one thing and 7 people can hear it differently. They'll all have their own version, because different people pick up what they want to hear and what suits them best. So, with the case of the reservation, I think she just heard, we don't take reservation. And it suited them to come and say, yes, but I made this call and they had 10 people, so they're not going to make themselves look silly in front of them. So it serves them to do that. So I always say, if I have a situation with someone, it's like, what was my intention? And and I'm the only one that knows what my intention is. As long as you know that your intention was good and it came from a kind, loving place, I think that's where you make the peace with yourself and say, look, this is where I was coming from, and how that other person perceived it or took it. Well, that's just on them. I can't be responsible for their reactions. The only person I can be responsible is for myself.
And people are so scared to let us go and to let us be free spirits to do whatever we want to do, because they're so afraid of losing us. It's just like you listened to the same podcast I did with Michelle Obama. And she did say, some people aren't ready to go with you on your journey, and you have to leave them sitting there. And sometimes you can loop back around and scoop them up
Yep.
if they're ready. But if they're not ready, and it's like I've always told my children, if something's not part of the solution, it's part of the problem.
It's kind of bittersweet experience, right? But like I kind of sensed like whenever I change, like when I moved to Australia, when I moved to the States and everything, there was always somebody saying, "You cannot do that. You will fail. Why are you doing this? Why you are not staying at this current stage?" But that's when I make the great impact in my life. So
Yeah.
I just take it as a sign that I'm going to the right path, right way.
Right. The road to success is often narrow,
Mm,
and it's often lonely because people do drop off the grid, so to speak,
right.
of your life.
Debbie, I'd love your perspective on this.
I started picturing it recently as like different plateaus. And sometimes when we are called to the next plateau of understanding and truth, we're a new student and we're peaking up at the next level because some truth has made sense to us or caught our attention and we're curious, right? So we start looking beyond what we were doing. When we move beyond something, there's a left behind and a more to discover, always, no matter what plateau we're on. So there's a relatability. We speak a different language and they're not ready for that language, but we know the language of the other plateau. So we can be kind, we can be gentle, we can keep moving forward without feeling like we can't pull anybody to the next plateau. That's just it. I wanted so badly to drag my husband, club him, and take him to the next plateau so he wouldn't die and lose everything. You just can't. So
yeah,
you can only love people from the next place. If they're asking, you can answer. If they're judging, you can give peace and blessing. But it's so hard because until you realize, because you go up there with no one, so you feel so lonely. It's hard to meet new friends in the new town, but you do eventually. And pretty soon that's your people, that's your life. This is the richness. And then when you're called to the next plateau, you're like, oh gosh, I'm going to miss some of this. But it gets easier to keep climbing because the rewards are too beautiful.
But that's a good illustration. And I love the way you talked about life in levels, thing about how we are on different plateaus and we do rise above what we once accepted in our lives. We do rise above violence or that we once settled for or accepted. And it is a level. It's like climbing a mountain, this thing called life. And I know I've lost a lot of people in my life that I thought it was just so devastating. But then I look back and I realized that I could not have grown them, nor could they have grown me anymore. And it was time to cut and go to the next level. And when you realize that you're not serving a person and their relationship is not serving you any longer, then it's time to make an adjustment there and move forward.
The other person that is on the level that we can move up to the next one is our old version of ourselves. We also are part of the story of one part of us is here on the next plateau, and our older version, yesterday, me, is on the lower plateau. And that's the only person, that's sometimes the one we forget about. That's our mindset adjustment. We have to adjust that girl. The newer version of me is the one calling out to my older self, right? So that's like the inner battle that's always going on is like, when I'm feeling 100% about something, but the second this voice comes in to stop me, it's my voice. It's the lower version of me on that other plateau speaking that language and saying, you know this language better. And I'm like, no. I know this truth. I'm going to pull. I'm here. I'm staying here. I'm not going back down. I'm not going back down. You're coming up someday.
That's the only ascension we really need to worry about, right? Our own journey. Because we can't really take anyone else with us. It's not our job. You can give the information. You can't expect them to understand it, and they can't expect you to go back. But
Some
whatever
people,
works for you, yeah.
afraid of change. But I'm more afraid of not changing or not evolving.
Yeah.
I want to grow every day,
Yeah.
right?
Me too.
Nobody's perfect, and there's a lot to learn in your life. Not changing this, actually, your life is going this way.
Mhm. That's
Well, that's the scariest thing, right? Either going
Yeah,
that way or
that's so
just
scary.
staying static. That's not good as well. You know, if you're living, you should be changing.
that is so
I'm
true.
ready for it.
You're
Especially
ready.
like there is a God or universe. Why are you challenging me so much this week?
That
But
new
like
plateau
I
has
learned to reevaluate my lifestyle, and because of what I experienced, I understand what I truly value and what I really don't need in my life right now. So that was a big lesson. Thank you for watching today's episode of Breakout. Hope you liked it. And if you liked it, please leave us a comment and also subscribe us on YouTube as well. I'll see you soon.